All right, I want to walk you through how to use a spreadsheet if you've never used one before. There are three, I think, that are available to you at home that should be pretty easy to use. You're going to want to do this for project one at least. You might find this useful for other assignments later on in the term. And certainly this is just a good thing to know in general if you've never used any kind of spreadsheet before. So I'm going to show you Excel first, which you should have available to you through Office 360, which you can get as a student for free. And if you have some other access to the Microsoft Office suite, I recommend Excel. I think it's certainly the most powerful of all of them, but we don't really need power here. But it does make some things easier to do. But I'll also show you how to use Google Sheets and Google Docs later on, which you should be able to get just from Google. So either way, any of those formats are fine as long as you're presenting it in this kind of spreadsheet format. So the first thing that we're going to take a look at here, however, is Excel. And I've just typed in the first three columns up here, A, B, and C, the three columns that I'm asking you to have on assignment one, which is the page number of the script, the item, which is the thing that you are calling out, and then how it is being used and any information that you might have on the description of it, or if there's anything in the text that we should highlight from there. But first of all, we're not going to want these columns to be equal sized. And if you notice right now here, you see there's this little dashed line right here, and that's telling us that by default, it is typically setting it up into a portrait orientation, which means it's wider or it's narrower than it is high. So it's just like a normal piece of paper when you're typing, and that's portrait. So landscape is when you turn it sideways, and it's longer on the top than it is on the sides. And that's better for us here because you're going to want to be able to have more length this way. So that's very easily done in Excel. You might be on one of these other tabs up over here. So you just want to click on the tab that says Page Layout. And to switch the orientation, it's quite easy. That's what this little button does right there. Click on that and just select landscape out of that, and you'll notice that that little dashed line has jumped over here. So this is a piece of paper, a 8.5 by 11 piece of paper that is being outlined on here. So if you were to hit print, it would print from A to M and all the way down here to number 34. But we're going to make a few changes here as well. You can also change the margins. I think it's perfectly fine if you want to just go to narrow, just sort of give yourself a little bit more room. That bought us another column there. No height difference there, but that made it a little bit wider. That's perfectly fine as well if you want to make the margins a little wider. Now, the first thing that we're going to want to do is to set up these various columns. So I'm going to click on column A and B and C on here, and I'm going to right click on these, and I'm going to find format cells. So I just selected all three of these columns, and I want to just format some cells. And we're just going to do some things that'll make it a little bit easier as we move along here. When I pop that open here, it's probably going to be a number to start off with. So let me move it back over to number. And you can see that what we can do right now is to just select text out of this list. So it's reading each of the cells as accounting cells or numbers or dates. So, if you put 2/ something, where it might read that as a date, or it might try to divide one number into another number, or, so we just want to read as text. So we're just going to click on text, and then just like it says here, the cell is displayed exactly as entered. So it's not going to use this as a calculator as it would in some of these other ones. It's just going to type whatever we type in here, it's going to leave alone. The other one that you might want to consider doing here is if you click over here on alignment, this might be checked by default or it might not. So we want to click on this wrap text. And what that does is if you have more room than you have in the column width, it's just going to give yourself a little carriage return. It's going to give yourself another space. So it might make for some wider columns here, but then you're not going to have text kind of running underneath the next column here. So if you don't want it to do that, you can deselect that. If you do want it to do that, you can change it there. Also, this is really kind of a handy thing. I don't want you to mess with it right now, but do be aware of if you are trying to get, later on, you're not going to need that for this assignment, but if you're trying to get like maybe a costume breakdown or something like that, where you're just trying to put like an X in a field, but you got a long character's name, count so-and-so or whatever, and you just need to, you don't want to take up a bunch of room over here. Changing this little guy over here will change the orientation of the text in the field. So you can make something go straight up and down or at an angle, and that can be very useful for now. You can also universally change the size of the font. That's easy enough to do in other ways, but you can do it over here as well. So just be aware of those two. But we want to just make sure that you select a text, and that I think it's probably a good idea if you use the wrap text option over here, and then we can say OK. Now you can see what it's already done there. It's taken this use notes and it has kind of wrapped it around there. So it's made this column twice as high. And we're going to change that here in just a second, so it doesn't really matter. The next thing we're going to want to do, I'm going to want to deselect my cells right now, and because I want these all to be different, I'm going to want the column A to be fairly skinny because I just need to put a number here, 12, 14, whatever. I don't need too much room in here, so I've got some wasted space, but I certainly want to make these two columns much bigger than they are. So if I move my cursor right up there to the space between the two letters, the A and B there, for example, it turns into a little double-headed icon there, a little double-headed arrow, and I can click with my left mouse button and drag over so that now I've shrunk that first column. And notice I just put PG and hashtag there, page number, instead of typing out page number as a full word. That's much longer than it needs to be. That's all we need, page number. But we definitely do want to make these next two fields bigger. So I'm going to take B here and I'm going to push it over till maybe somewhere like that, about a third of the way across. And I've got all the way over here to this dashed line. Now this dashed line, remember, is the edge of our paper. So we don't want to go past this, but I can grab the edge of C and push it all the way till it's just right about over there. And as long as it doesn't suddenly, if this line jumps over here, then you went too far and you're going to need to shrink it back a little bit. But now we have all three of these columns nice and big, and they are on this side of the line. Now what you might want to do here is to go back. I'm going to hold the shift key down and select both of these. And you might want to come in here and just give yourself some fill. So see, I think that is under home there. So we might want to just pop open the little paint bucket. I like to use this like pale blue fill right there. So if you do that, you see now you've got a nice little, you just put some paint in the background over there. You don't have to do that, but I think that's nice. That makes it kind of tidy. Now do be aware though, I think I forgot to make sure back on, where's that page layout? We do want to make sure that you've got the print grid lines view and print. Please check that on there for me. I don't think it's going to matter so much digitally, but we definitely do want to do that if you're ever printing, because that'll put these little grid lines in here, and that makes it really hard to read without those unless you're doing like alternating color. But that's pretty much all you need to do. And now you can just go along here and add in information. And then if you do add information, I'm just going to put in some gibberish in here. Let me just copy that. And I'll just paste that in there until we get, so now you can see that this field here has gotten bigger, and that's okay, even though it might be bigger than you need on this side here. This way you can read all of the text. You're probably not going to need this much, but you are going to need more than that in some cases. So if you want to edit the fields here, you just double click into it and change it, or you can always change text up here in the top. Either one of those will work. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that because we don't really need that, and we're good to go. And the nice thing here about Excel is that you just keep on going until you have all the numbers needed. I just hint here, you probably are going to need more than one page. Well, you're certainly going to need more than one page, even just for the dumbwaiter. You're going to want to be noting all the various things that you're finding in the text, and that's going to take you more than 33 items. It would be smart if you wanted to copy and paste this over into the next. There's a couple of more complicated ways to do that, but for this assignment, you can just copy and paste it so that you got that little page header at the top of both pages or all three pages or whatever you want to do. And then the last thing that's kind of nice here about using Excel is that you can come in at the end here and insert a text block here. So let's see, we've got text box right there. So you can just come over here on this last page. Say you're on page 3 by the time you get down there. You can just click and drag a little text box. And this is a little text box where you can type in that little summary paragraph that I'm asking for at the very end. So you can just sort of drop it right on top. So maybe 42 here is your last item on your list, and then but you want to do that summary that I'm asking for in the assignment. That can be done right there. And then when you're all done, you're going to want to go ahead here and export, and then you're going to want to export as a PDF, and then you'll get a little preview. It's going to ask you what do you want this to be exported at. I'll just put it on my desktop because I'm going to delete it, and then let's see, it'll give me a little preview. This is the little reader that I use here, and look, there's our little text box down at the bottom, and this is what you would then don't forget to add your name. You can do that in the header, add your name to the document, and remember to save the file name with your last name in it, like I've asked for in the assignments, and then you're all set and you're good to go with that one. Now if you don't have access to Excel, then you can do, let's find here, I've got it here on Google Sheets. So here's Google Sheets all set up and ready to go, and I've already set up the columns the way that I had them set up on the previous in Excel. Now, the one thing that you don't do, unless I can't seem to find it, I don't use Sheets very often, but I can't seem to find a way to guarantee that I'm looking at the right width. There's no rulers here, and there's no way to sort of page setup. You can, however, when you get ready to print, it will give you a little print preview of how big your columns are. That looks like that's going to fit. I'm not quite sure why there's so much room over here off to the side here, but you can switch to landscape right here. And the nice thing here with Google Sheets is that you can it's just going to scale, it's going to fit to width. So you don't want this to be too big, because the bigger you make these columns, the smaller it's going to be on, I don't want to have to get out a jeweler's loop to read your assignment here. So make sure it's not too big. I'd rather have you just do a text wrap over here and make it more pages, because they're digital pages now. You don't even need to print this term, so you're good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. And I'm trying to think what else is different here. So I think that's about it. You can use the same, if you want to do that fill here, you do that same option by selecting them, and then you do the fill here on that. So you get that kind of item, that column heading fill. You can cut and paste them. You do need the formats. Text wrapping is right here, where you can select under format and text wrapping and click wrap right there. It's fairly straightforward to find. And then, you do want to select your columns, and I think it's right over here, number and plain text. So that's the same thing as doing that right click in Excel and setting it just to text, and that'll stop it from doing strange things for you. The only problem with this is that you will then I don't think there's any way to insert a text block on top of this. So, you could, I guess, just use one field and just kind of write on for a while in one of the fields, or just save it as a separate sheet and just attach it as a separate document. One thing you can do if you were over here in Google Sheets is that you do have the ability to, I think the page setup is where you're going to want to change that portrait landscape. So I also made the margins a little larger. They're 1 inch by default, which is bigger than we need. But so I just set it to landscape and just typed in 0.5 down over here. And I click cancel over there. And that was under file, page setup down here, over here at the bottom. And this is different than the others because this is inserting a table. So you can go in here and insert a table, and then you can say the way you insert a table, let me put it down here at the bottom, is if you say insert and then where to go, table, and then you can say, all right, I need 3 cells over, and it'll let you do 20 cells down. And then when you click on that, did it do it? I think it did it. Did it do it? It then inserts more columns, and then they work exactly the same as the others. You just move your cursor over the top over here and move those around. You type in your number in your text in here. You don't have to worry about changing the fields to just be text because it is a text document, and this just allows you to add in information. And then the nice thing is that because it is a Word document, basically it's a word processor document, you can just add that final paragraph down here at the bottom. So you can keep on adding in cells. Also too, if you go down over here, and this is true in all of them, you can right click and insert a row. If you realize, I should have added something right here, or you can go in and say insert a row above or below. You probably don't want to insert a column because you only need the 3 columns. And you can also delete rows. So you can say, I ended up having more than I needed, so I can go over here and I can say delete 5 rows, and then it just subtracted that from the bottom there. Now you don't need to mess with that with the spreadsheets because they're only going to show you rows that you've got data in, but this table is going to be here whether you like it or not if you use Google Docs. So if you have any other questions on that, and in all of them, the font size is just changed. You can make the font whatever size you want it to be. So select the fields, select them all, or select just one of them. Maybe you want your header to be a little bit larger font. You can do that. So then it's automatically wrapped it around there. So I can just scooch that over so it doesn't need to be wider. So all of these are perfectly fine ways to add the items and the notes for Project 1. So if you have any more questions about how to use any of this stuff, just send me an email, send me a text, and I will do my best to answer them. But this is the format that I'm really looking for your Project 1.